Thank you very much. I've heard the skew called anything from a paint can opener to a lawn dart. There's a lot more skew users in this place than I've seen most places, so it's really good. I really like people to use the skew. It's my go-to tool, and I love it for spindle work on smaller spindles. I won't use a skew if it gets larger than about 3.5 inches in diameter. I know John will maybe use it on bigger than that, but he's got a lot more experience than I have, so maybe in 10 years, 15 years from now, I'll try it. But for this point, the smaller stuff is what I like. But I want to talk to you about the different types of skews and what I like and what I don't like. There's 3 types of skews and 2 different grinds. The 3 types of skews we use are called the flat, the oval, and the round. And if you look at them from a profile, both sides of this skew are flat.
Right over your stock.
Okay, right over my stock. All right, if you look at them from a profile this way or this way, the flat one has 2 sides that are parallel, and that's the one I use mostly. The oval has a profile that is, both sides are curved, more like 2 parentheses side by side. And this one, a lot of people like it, but it is a pain to sharpen. And we'll talk about sharpening here in just a minute. And then there's a round skew. There's a few people I know that use a round skew. I think John Solberg uses one a lot. Another person in our club, Brian Evans, uses one. I haven't had a lot of luck with them, but I haven't had a lot of practice with them either. Sharpening, I still need to probably get with John or Brian to learn how to sharpen these better, because trying to hold them, even John Horn, but these are not easy to sharpen. So the 2 different types of grinds are the curved or the radius skew and then the straight skew. This is the one that you will find on most skews that come out of the box. Thompson sells a straight radius, a straight skew. Sorby sells a straight skew. But the 2 people that use the radius skews are Richard Raffin and Alan Lacer. They almost swear by them. Different radiuses, different profiles, but they're radiused. And I use the Alan Lacer. The major difference between the Raffin and the Lacer is Lacer has a little flat spot up here. If you look at this right in here, it goes straight and then curved. It's not curved all the way. Richard Raffin has a less of a curve, but his has no flat spot. And they're both very effective on how they use them. I like the flat spot because I use that for the peel and cut, and it's a lot more effective than something that's round. So we don't have a grinder. Well, I'm going to use this little wheel in lieu of a grinder. This straight skew, when you grind this, you're going to put this on a flat surface, what do they call them? There's a platform that, it's a tool rest, but who makes that? Wolverine just has a flat tool rest. You're going to put it on there. Sorby has a piece that they use on theirs that has a 70-degree angle or 20-degree angle, whichever way you want to look at it. And they say to hold this flat in the middle. And it will give you a pretty grind. I've never been able to make that useful very easy. One of our guys in our shop, Fred Groves, he's out in Hunt County, is his main club. He has a little jig that holds this thing out on the outside so it's steady. And it holds it in there, so if you want to do one side, then you have to open it, turn it on the other side, and do the other side. The problem with a skew is 2 things. Getting this angle correct, in the bevel angle correct, and getting the bevel or the cut in the dead center of the skew. You don't want this bevel to be offset one side or the other. You want it in the middle this way. So you have to grind on one and then grind on the other equally if it's already centered. If not, you have to find a way to center that. And the way you do that is when the wheel is setting like this, you have to make sure this is at a 90 degrees to the wheel. And that is going to be about a 70-degree angle measured this way. If this is 90, that's going to be a 70 between what they call the toe and the heel, or the long and short point. And that works for the radius skew. Between this point and this point is also going to be 70 degrees. So don't measure out here, measure between the points. And that's what you're looking for. Hold it flat. And you've got to hold this flat against the tool rest and run it across. Flip. Oh, now it does need sharpening. I'm glad this is not the one I'm going to use tonight, so. Turn it over and do the other way, and you flip it back and forth equally. Once it's centered, because if you do 2 times on this one, once on that one, and say it's okay, you're going to sharpen it about 3 times, and then this point is going to be way over here. You're going to have a short bevel here and a very long bevel here, and it's going to be hard to use. When you're doing the round skew, and correct me if I'm wrong, you still have to hold this dead in the center and do the same basic thing. And I don't know if there's a jig to use or not. I haven't seen a jig on this, but you're still going to grind this flat. This point, again, 70 degrees between here and here, and make it a, 1.5 times. The bevel here, between here and the bottom of the bevel, is going to be about 1.5 times the diameter or the thickness of your shank. And that puts this angle about a 70 degrees. And that's going to give you a real good cut, softwood or hardwood. A lot of people would advocate that on softer woods, you can get a higher angle. You get a cleaner cut. On harder woods, you have less of an angle. I use the same angle no matter what I'm cutting on. Whether it's on this soft, what did you call this in your demo? Chateau Depot. It's the 2x4 from Home Depot, and you cut them up. One of Alan Lacer's demos, he said to go get a 2x4 and you cut it into 1.5-inch squares, and you get about 24 of them out of a 2x4 if you make this slightly shorter than your tool rest. I like it about 1 inch short of my tool rest, so I only have to do one at a time. And you get about 24 pieces. And you could go all day practicing the skew on, what does a 2x4 cost? $2.50? And it's really, depending on what kind you want, you can, so it's about 10 cents a piece of wood to practice on. And it's really, really fun. You spend your day learning something that you haven't learned. And get these other things out of the way, because I don't use the straight skew and I do not use the oval skew. I do not like it. One, I have not gotten used to it, and I don't use the straight skew anymore. You'll find there people will like the straight skew or they'll like the radius, but you won't find people that use both. I haven't found anyone that likes both of them. I prefer the radius skew. And my favorite skew is one of these. These two are the same type of skew. They're a 5/8-inch skew from Alan Lacer. And the difference is this one has a longer shaft, and you look at it, this one's nice and thick. This one gets real thick down here. And I like it because it's long. You buy this one from Alan Lacer without a handle, and you make your handle on it. This one comes from Hamlet, I think it is. You can get this at Woodcraft. You can get them at Rockler. You can order them online. But I would say the thicker the stock here, the better off you are. The real thin ones are useless, in my mind. Now, the other thing I'll talk about real quick is the bottom of the skew. When you buy a skew from Sorby, you'll find that this bottom here is very flat. And it used to be, up until probably a year and a half ago, that these edges would dig into your tool rest. They were very, very sharp. And they've just recently started softening those edges, but it's still a flat bottom. Thompson skews and Allen Lacer skews have this already radiused. And if you buy a skew that's flat, or you have a skew that's flat, you want to take this on a grinder or a belt sander with a nice, I don't know, 80 grit, 120 grit, something that cuts metal, and radius that over. You want to get this round. You want to cut those edges. You don't want them to dig into your tool rest, because when you're moving along, you don't want it to catch or stop. You want to move very smoothly. So what's the 4 cuts that people talk about with a skew? You have a peeling cut, you have a planing cut, you have a shoulder cut, and you have a V cut. Are the 4 cuts that normal people want. You showed me, you talked about another one I'm not going to try tonight. So we're going to talk about each one of those. And I always turn the lathe on when the dial is at 0. And I turn it up to speed. I like it to go very, very fast. Before I get started, I want to talk about 2 other things. This piece here, you get from one way, and you can get them. I guess there's a couple places that sell them, but what they call a dead center. Just a little bit. All right. And this is perfectly round when you buy it. What I did is I took it and I put it in the lathe, and I spun the lathe very slowly, and I took a file and I made this edge very sharp. It's since been dulled, so it's not as sharp as it used to be. And then I cut 3 small teeth in it. And that's enough to grip when I'm using the skew. You don't use this on roughing logs. You don't use it on roughing other green wood, so to speak. So I use this on regular, if I'm doing a salt mill, pepper mill, or if I'm doing skew work on kiln dried wood, this is perfect. There's also one of these you can get with Sorby, or you can get from PSI. This is a lesser expensive. I think I paid $18 for it, but it works just as fine. This has a spring-loaded piece in it, and the center is spring-loaded, which is nice because you can set this in here and let that spin, test your wood. The other thing I've got is over here, these little inserts are for one-way live centers, and I get them from Cindy Drozer. They're about $12 a piece. Or you can make one out of aluminum. You can turn your lathe speed down and you can cut it on your lathe. But they got these little pins in here, very small pins. This has a slight cup on it. Some have flat. They don't dig into your wood a lot. So if you're trying to do a piece and you don't want to cut a lot off to get rid of that hole, these are perfect for it. I like these little things. It also allows me to do my tenons in here. I can get down real close without having that big piece over here. All right, there we go. So let's start off real quick with a planing cut. Planing cut, the way I run a planing cut is put your skew up here, and it's not a noise because it's out of round, it's a noise because of the type of wood. It's just very grainy wood. Hold it flat, bring it in there, and then I roll the tool this way until I get a bevel, until I get it cut. Now I know I'm riding the bevel. and I move my body across the tool this way. Come back. I keep the skew at a 90-degree tube. I don't know if you can see this very well, but I roughed this out with a roughing gouge today before I came, and then this is what the planing cut. You almost don't need sandpaper. If you put any sandpaper on it, it's more or less just to rough it up so that whatever you're putting on there has something to grab onto. I would come back here with 320 or 240, and I wouldn't do anything else. Just a little bit. Again, hold it flat, turn it, and what I'm cutting with, the part of the tool that I'm actually using is right here. I never get up in this area when I'm cutting this way. I've seen people turn the tool over and all that, but I haven't gotten used to it. But if I try not to cut on the tip, and I try not to get above center. I try and get as close to the bottom as possible, and that gives me the best cut. The reason why I like the radius skew is I've noticed that when I'm cutting different types of woods, and in one piece of wood you may get closer to a knot, which has a harder wood, I can make minute adjustments up this way and down this way with my body to get rid of any chippiness as I'm cutting. With a straight skew, you're already over this way, and it's hard to make those adjustments for me. But here, I'm in full control. I've got a handle length. I got a handle length that I can put against my body with the longer handles, and it's so much easier. Finish this off. Now I want to show you one other thing. Watch when I'm cutting. You're going to see, like right in front of the skew, you're going to see a little wave. This little wave right here is what I'm talking about. Look at the shavings. That's what you're looking for. If you get something like this, you're cutting with the tip. You're cutting with that tip, not the actual blade of the skew. There we go. And that's the planing cut. And you can see how smooth of a finish that is. Over here, I played with it a little bit. It's not, I've got some bumps, but that is an absolutely smooth cut, finish cut. You can't get that with a lot of the tools when you're going a long straight way. If you wanted to taper this, you would take this bar and turn it just a little bit to match your taper. So if you want a table leg, what you would do is move this like this, start down here, and I'm holding my finger against the tool rest, and I'm pushing hard on the tool rest, not on the wood. And what I'm doing is I'm using the tool rest angle. You notice that the angle here is my table leg. And you can have a finished table leg when you get it off the lathe, and you don't need to go sand it or anything else. Yes, sir. From here?
Yeah, when you're cutting, are you above, below, on center line?
That's a good point. When I set my tool rest is at the center line, and I am always cutting above center, probably halfway between the center and the top. Closer to the top if I can get it with the skew. I don't want to be cutting down here. With the skew, the way I use it, because I am coming at the skew with a 90-degree angle to the tool. Some of the other skews with the straight, you'll see people doing this way. You can get closer to the bottom because you're still cutting at you're cutting at a better angle. It's about a 45-degree angle they're looking for, but you're attacking the wood differently. What you're looking for, the best thing you're looking for is a smooth cut and a clean shaving. If you're getting that, really doesn't matter. Remember, this is a round piece of wood, so center line is relative, right? We're center line in a circle. Turn this way or turn that way, depends on where it's at, right? So depends on where you're attacking it and you're holding the tool this way, I can get closer to the center this way, but the way I'm using it, I'm on the top. And I always try and cut these things the same length so I can do this with. Now, let's smooth this off. One of the other cuts, the most useful cut that people use the skew for is a V-cut. And a V-cut really defines a bead or a cove, the edges. Take your skew, put it on a point, raise the handle. Come over to the other side. That's all I'm doing, straight, raising the handle. And now you've got two definitive cuts. To expand that, I'm going to come over to the edge, and I'm going to come over to a little bit, and I'm going to point this tip to the center of that previous cut from here, and I want to end up in that previous cut. And I'm going to deepen that V groove. And the depth is going to be defined by the depth of your bead. How deep does that bead or the detail need to be? Now, one of the problems work through, if you take a look, can you get a look right down here where we do it? Let me do it this way. What I want to try and do is get it right in front of the camera. Now, take a look here. This curvature is not the same as this one. I've got one cut this way and one cut this way. This side is not so pronounced, but it is the same thing. Why? Because we always work differently between the left and the right. If I'm coming this way, I'm doing a left to right cut. If I'm coming this way, I'm doing a right to left cut. One of the things you want to look for is you want to try and make these the same. To hone your skill, you want to work on those so they're equal. And another thing to practice with. When I'm doing the first V cut, all I'm doing it straight. When I'm doing these cuts to widen it, I have to tilt a little because this point is going to go from this edge where I'm going to start a new cut to the dead center of that previous cut. So I have to cut a little bit of an angle. Just make sure that this edge up here doesn't grab the side of this. So don't do it like this too much. You want to try and come at it the same angle. You'll find out that if I get in here like this, I'm going to get a nasty catch. And those nasty catches are what scare people away from the skew. I try and keep this perpendicular. And that's why I like this skewed one. It's long enough to allow me to do that. For these cuts, it doesn't matter what type of skew you use. Whether you use a straight skew or not, still the same thing. But I'm still only raising the handle. I'm not finessing the tool in any other way. I'm just getting in here and I'm raising the handle. That's a V-cut. Shoulder cut is really not much more than that last cut we did on the side. The difference is I'm trying to make this bevel here about 1 degree less than parallel. I do not want it to go over, I want it less. But I don't want this to catch up here, or that's going to give me a nasty catch again. But it gives you one of the smoothest cuts you can get. Over here on end grain, because what you're doing is cutting end grain off. And it's a really nice way, and there's very, very little sanding to do on it. The last cut is a peeling cut, and this is why I like this one, because it has a radius to use on other things, but it has that little flat spot. Bring it up just like you were going to do the original cut, and then raise the handle till you get a cut. And it's a way to make your tenon. So if you're doing a pepper mill or you're doing something else, or if I'm going to do something I need a tenon to set in whether it's a table leg or a piece to something else that I'm going to set in, I can make that tenon very easy with a peeling cut, and that's what I do. So with those 4 cuts, what other good is a skew? How many people make beads with a skew? I know you do. You do? John does, a couple, okay. Making beads with a skew, do you use a long point or the short point? Long point? You don't use the short point? Why not? More comfortable, okay. And it's a preference. You'll find, Mark Twain once said that in any debate, the number of opinions will equal or exceed the number of participants. And that's true in wood turning. What you have to understand is find your way. No one can tell you how to do it. They can tell you how they do it. And that's it. So all we can do is show you techniques to get you started in practice. And hopefully tonight I'm going to show you some things here that will help you overcome the fear of the skew for those of you who don't like the skew. So to make a bead, my first thing is we'll take center line, and I use the small point or the short point or the heel most of the time. Cut the corner. And again, I keep the tool at a 90 degree as much as possible and roll. There's a bead. Now we're going to make a bead with the long point. With the long point, basically the same thing. And a bead. How many of you guys do a coves with a skew? You make coves with a skew on purpose? It's an acquired skill, right? Making a cove is much like any other thing. You got to start in the middle and come out. Dig in a little bit. Now, your cove, you notice here, on the edge, right here. When I'm making my cove, what made that? The back edge. That's what limits you when you do the skew. When you do a cove with a skew, that back edge. You can take a honing tool, if you want, and soften that up a little bit. But the next time you grind, next time you sharpen it, it's gonna be just as sharp. But practice with it, and you'll find out that making a cove, you'll find your limitations of what you can do. And how to manipulate the tool. With a regular skew, you're not going to get much deeper than that with a 5/8" skew. With a bigger skew, you're going to go less. You're going to have a lot shallower. But on this size of wood, I don't want to go much deeper because now you're going to get into something that's starting to flex and you're going to have a lot of problems anyway. So here's a couple things that we haven't shown you yet. There's a couple ways to center, and I usually don't have my centering tool handy. So I try and have a pencil at my lathe at all times. Then I have one of these little punches. There. Still not perfectly round, but yet. So there's a couple different ways to round something with a skew. The planing cut is a great example. What I'm going to do is come up and I'm going to turn the tool this way until I get a cut, and then I'm just going to move it down. And that still takes some time. I'm going to come back, I'm going to do it a little faster. Peeling cut. And what I would caution you on this, if you're going to go out and do the peeling cut, the harder the wood, the harder it is to learn. Because as soon as you get to a point, you're going to start getting pushback. Get used to that feel of the skew. It's going to push back to you real quick. You get it a wrong angle, you're going to get a catch. So make the softer the wood, now, and that's how I round something off. We're going to do one more of these in a different way. I'm going to mark center, then I'm going to mark another edge. We'll do that one in a bit. Because now we're going to get into how to learn how to finesse the skew a little bit. How I learned the skew. One of the hardest things to learn transitioning from a regular gouge to a skew is when you're using a gouge, you are putting the tool against the wood and making your cuts. You're pushing and holding it against the wood. With a skew, you never want to do that. The wood is never a support for the tool like it is with a gouge. Watch Stuart, Betty. Is it Stuart or out? Stuart, he was at SWAT, right? He'll take and he'll put his bowl gouge in there and he'll ride it without another hand all the way through. You never want to try that with a skew. You want to have something on this tool rest at all times, because that skew has to be supported, and that's where your strength comes. When you do a V-cut here, and you come back and you do this wide cut, you don't want to ride that bevel. The term gliding is much more accurate. We'll see what we get here if we got any. You'll see that the cuts here are fairly smooth. When you ride that bevel, when you try and ride that bevel, you're going to find you're going to get scars all up and down there. See where those scars are right in here? And that's why this cheap wood is going to help you. This is where the tool is going to, the cheap wood is going to help you. It doesn't cost a lot. Matter of fact, if you got a tree to cut down, cut some of these up into little squares. It doesn't cost you anything. It's probably better than a 2x4. The advantage of a 2x4, it's a soft wood. So if you find some soft wood, whether it's I don't know, some of the trees around here are fairly soft. I wouldn't do it with a Bradford pear because it's still a fairly hard wood. But you can find some of the softer woods around here. And just practice your cuts until you get smooth. You want to practice your beads? Same thing. You ever notice that on a table leg? You'll see a pummel cut, is what they call this, a pummel cut into the point, and it starts from square to round. And this is how they do that. Same thing. A lot of the guys use skews. And if you look at that cut, that's a nice cut. And that's what you want to do. When you start out, it took me probably, 10 2x4s. It's going to take you some time. Don't be afraid of it. Power through it. Because a skew is a hard tool to learn. But it's fun. Once you acquire your skews, the skill from a skew, the other tools that you use will be better. You'll be better at that. You can do it the other way. You gotta watch dirty bottoms. I'm getting pretty thin here, so I'm not gonna go much more on this piece. But that is how I learned how to use the skew, finesse the bevel. It's gliding that bevel. You're holding it hard against I won't say really hard, but you're holding it against the tool rest, not against the wood. You're not pushing it here like you would a gouge. You're controlling the tool, not the wood. The wood's not controlling the tool, you are. With a gouge, you're riding that bevel and you're making sure that that bevel is against the wood. You're getting a nice burnish. Here, you'll get a nice burnish, but you have a lot more surface. If you look at the skew, you have a lot more surface actually touching the wood. That's where your burnishing comes from, not the cutting edge like you would with a gouge, not the bevel. You just have a longer bevel. John, you pass these around? These are some of the things that I've done. What I'm going to show you here is doing some offset turning. What I do is I'll take and I'll drill a 7/8 inch hole here. And I got that whole diameter from the base of a candle. So these long candles, they're about a 7/8 of an inch. If you find your candles are a different diameter, drill a different size of hole. I do my center finding, and then on the outside, I'm going to take this side, and I'll make sure that my mark is equal distance between here and here on both sides. Then I'm going to mark a punch on the outside where those lines intersect, and on the other side, on the exact same corners, this corner and this corner, I'm going to make another mark with my center punch. So, this is where the fun actually is. I've never had one come off yet. But I've seen these come off, and I've never seen the audience in danger. Because this is spinning this way, if it comes off, I'm the one getting hit. So. Wait till it happens first, right? And again, my speed range is very high. I like it on the high range because it gives me better control. The slower the speed, the less control you have on a skew. That's about $3,000. So that's max. And that's usually what I run this type of stuff with. Again, teach you how to glide. The inside bevel, I'm not really concerned about. This bevel over here is what I'm concerned about because that's what's going to be left over. In the middle, I want a bevel here and a bevel I'm going to cut and take the center out. But that bottom's got to be clean. Bottom and the top. And the reason I do this is to give me more air. And why is that important? If you're used to riding the tool against the wood, you're never going to get a clean cut. So when I'm out here, I'm pushing, I'm gonna go this way. When I'm here, I'm gonna be pushing against the wood. But I don't want to do that. I want this tool to go this way, no matter what I'm doing. I don't care if there's wood or air. I don't want the project to control the tool. So I come in here and I learn this. And I want this out of the way. When I get this clean, this bevel here on the outside is what I want clean. You see how that's still real scarred? Can you see that? This edge here, you can see the tool marks on it. Right? Finessing the tool and you can get a clean cut. That's what you want, is a clean cut. It's the hardest thing to do when you're cutting air. But when you learn to ride the tool against the tool rest, not against the wood, you'll get that clean cut. see what we got now. We got cleaner cuts, we got something that's sandable. We're still not deep enough because I'm still got spaces here and here and I need to get rid of. So I need to go a little deeper. You need to make sure you don't go too thin. And there's two things you got to worry about here. The further apart your marks are here, the more lopsided that's going to be, and the less material you're going to have at these two joints when you're done. So I don't make them too wide. I make them just slightly larger than that hole over here. What I'm trying to get at here, let me see if I can do this. If I were to put this point way out here on both sides, I wouldn't be like this, I would be like this. I would be further skewed or offset. Now, what that does is at the point, if you can take a look here, this comes to a point here and I've got more wood in the middle. The more offset that is, at these joints, I'm going to have less wood. When I turn this back centered, that joint's going to be over here and over here. If I have very little wood here, when I pull this center up here, I'm going to snap it in half. So you don't want it more offset than you need it. But you wanted enough offset to give you some practice. And I usually use about the diameter, about 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches is about the size of the wood I use. Square. And I'll square it on the table saw. Now, the other thing you want to be careful of is when you come here, when you use this tip, you're going to get at one point right in here, if you're pushing too hard, you're going to pull it right into that. So be real careful that when you come in here, do your finishing cuts on the outside after you get this rounded. The other thing this does for me is at the end of the day, I've got a little project that I can make my wife mad by setting another one in the buffet. I don't know how many of these I've actually gone through. You get everything real nice, and these last little cuts, that's the catch. This, going through this process will help you overcome that. Practice it. There we go. And I'm always trying to use the bottom half, whether I'm turning it this way or I'm turning it this way, I'm using the bottom half of the tool. I'm never going to try and use the tool furthest away from the wood. It's always less than half. So I've got some pretty clean cuts there that sanding will take away. Come about in the middle. Make that dark because it is walnut. Remember that if you try this with pine, this corner here and this corner here has to be thicker than if it's a harder wood, because it's just not as strong. When you put it back between centers, it will snap a lot easier. Practice my coves. Now you notice that I'm at the point where the back end is actually ruining the cut. So I don't want to go any thinner. I want to level that out a little. And that's where okay. And again, be careful you don't break through and destroy that nice cut on the top and the bottom. My suggestion would be this: before you go out and buy a skew, is there's plenty of people here in the club that have one. You guys have open shop, right? Get with a couple of them that have the different types of skews, bring some 2x4s and play. See which one you like best. Because you're going to buy a skew that someone suggests and you're not going to like it. Play with it first. This was the first skew that I actually bought. And I'm actually glad I did, because I'm happy with it. I really like it. Other people refuse to use the round one. They like the straight ones. I've seen, there's a couple people I know that have taken the Allen Lacer and made them straight. Don't worry about the grind that comes on it. You can regrind a tool any way you want. So if you don't like it, you can grind it flat. If you want to buy a skew before you test anything, Thompson has a real good skew. They're not that expensive, but they don't have handles. You'll have to put it in the handle or buy one of their handles. The good thing about Thompson is this bottom here is pre-rounded, as the Lacer is. Any other suggestions, John?
I like the square edges.
The flat skew with the Thompson 1-inch. This is what he's talking about, something very similar to this, right? But like, okay, it's a little wider than this. It's probably that wide. That's a 1-inch skew, or 1 1/8. That's an oval, but it's a little wider. But what he's talking about is something very similar to this. It's about that wide to start with. What I would suggest, though, is playing with it when it's not yours. And there's plenty of people you can say, hey, we're going to be at open shop. If you're going to be there, can you bring one of your skews? 2x4s are cheap. Play with it.
Start with the square, the flat, parallel sides. Try to switch trying to start with the oval is tough.
I'll tell you, I'm not normal.
Being good at a skew and then trying to pick up an oval is tough. There's a big adaptation. I love my oval skew, but it's taken a long time to get that.
Yeah, and I'm not normal. I pick this one up straight away and I like it. So I don't do things normally as other people. As you can see, I go straight to the hard stuff.
And the other thing I'd echo is the beats, because I fought my oval. Finally had Clay Foster. Unless it's from him. Spent half a day with him. You're going to turn beats all day long.
And that's what it is. It's practice. The skew is, you have to practice more with the skew than you do any other tool in your arsenal.
I'll throw out one more thing about practice with it.
Go ahead.
Last year, I've not been able to
Keep some 2x4s in your shop. Cut. So when you get on the shop, I've heard this from a lot of different people, and it makes a lot of sense. Whether you're going to do a gouge, use a spindle gouge or anything, put a 2x4 on your lathe. First thing when you get in the shop, do beads and coves. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're going to do a hollow form or anything else. Put that 2x4 on there and do a bead and cove until you get used to doing it. And if you're not in your shop for a few months, come back and do it all over again. Just get that feel used to it. Get used to that. So at this point, what I would do is I would sand this piece before I take it off center. I didn't bring sandpaper, and I don't think you guys want to sit here and watch me sand. So I would sand this. Where is, oh, it's up here. What's that? Another good thing these heavy skews are for. A little piece of ash. Is, all right, guys, that's enough. Yep, it's a family show here. All right. I take a piece of hard wood. I won't take Popular. I played with it a little bit, but Popular, the threads don't hold very good, and I would not make this very long. I would put in here, drill a 5/8 inch hole. These threads are 3/4 by 10. Take your tap that out, and you could put it in here. What that's going to do for you is allow you to put that back between centers. And finish it up. And if you have a one-way tool that comes with 2 cones, aluminum cones, you don't want to put your aluminum cone in here. You center it perfectly, but when you finally, there's that little piece where I put my tip in here, I need to get rid of that. And I'm going to cut right into this piece of wood. So I can throw this piece of wood away. Those cones are pretty expensive. So that's why I use this. Now, can you see the ghost image on the camera? Take a look how thin that is. If I would have got that much thinner, I would have had a toothpick holding that together. And that's the wood that I'm putting pressure on this way. So when you're doing this offset, you got to think about these 2 points here and how thin it really is. If you get them too thin, you're going to put this in here first time and that thing's going to snap in half. Trust me, I've probably done it 10 or 15 times. Now, before I get this perfectly round, I'm also watching this ghost image here because I want this to come around and meet that other ghost image. And I'll show you why here in a second. Close enough for now. And I'm going to do that on the top and the bottom. This little point right here. When I'm coming in here, I'm going to gouge into that. If that happens to be a bead, it's going to actually overlap and you're going to actually cut into that bead. That's why I come with the cove. Because a bead would come out and this would be the bead would be out here on this point. So when you try and come in here, you're going to cut that bead, and it's going to actually have a gash across one side of it. So I practiced, trust me, this is experience talking. All right. Do a little bit of a cove. And when I come in here, all right, now I've dug into that wood some, and that's where the round center comes in handy. It'll stop like that. If you have a spur drive with 4 spurs, that won't stop. The other point that you want to practice something like this on is when you get to the point, if this is too far offset, you're going to get out here and you're not going to be round out here. If you set this out, so you're going to have some square points, some flat points out here. It's not going to look pretty. Needs to be cleaned up a bit still. Some woods, you notice that there was some smoke in there. Some woods, especially the domestic woods, cherry, maple, walnut, will burn a lot easier than some of the harder woods. Cocobolo will actually just get glossy because it's got a lot of oil on it. It won't burn. All right, so this is going to be my tenon. 2 things I want to do down here. I don't want the bottom to show, so I'm going to undercut. A little bit. And this again, practice with the softer woods, because this is where you can get into trouble. The size of this, I didn't bring my sizing tool. This is about 5/8. Well, I make my wrench fits right about over here, so I can make that real close. I just got to be careful I don't start cutting into it. It's not as soft as this wood is. Then I would sand the outside. There. And that's that's how I do this. I didn't get quite round so much in there. But that's why I practice a lot with my skews. I put it in a base, like this. Make my bases. You can make a base big, small, whatever. And that's the tenon should be the size of that hole. Make sure you understand which size that is. So if that's going to be, I usually use a 5/8 inch Forstner bit to drill that. And that's the standard thing I do. It doesn't have to be 5/8. You can use anything you want, but just keep it consistent. John, will you pass that around for me? The good thing about the hardwood like ash is I can keep that popular. I usually throw them away after each time because this part usually comes, the threads. Ash, I've used that about 4 or 5 times. It's still good. So, and I guess if you put some, I don't know, CA glue or something in there, it stiffens the threads up a little bit. But the harder woods are better. And this is something I didn't get to do at Dallas because we ran out of time, but I'm going to show you one thing that I like to do. It's good practice. It's good fun. And this is kind of goes counter to what a lot of people tell you when you're using a skew. And the reason we use this piece here is so you get slippage. You have no slippage on this one. You have no, if you get a catch, you get a catch. But that's why I use Popular, it's softer. I try and keep this parallel with the waves, the waves. All I'm doing here is knocking the corners off. Give me a warning track. Okay. So this will help you with your beads a little bit. I'm going to make a nice long bead. Looks more like a half of a football or a head of a missile. Okay. Now you check and make sure you don't have any bumps or ridges and a nice smooth cut. This point is used for one other thing. Now, what I'll do at home, which I'm not going to do here, I didn't bring my paint. What I'll do at home is before I do this part, I'll spray this green. I want this undercut. Yep, still not undercut enough. This is where you're going to learn to get catches and deal with catches a lot, because it's going to happen. You didn't know a skew was a chatter tool either, did you? Merry Christmas.
I'd like to see how you did the top part of that tree.
The fuzz? That's easy. And I learned this by pure accident. It actually was accident. So let me get another piece out. Do a bottle stopper. Okay. Let me get this off of there. Where's that? Okay. And you can make this lots of fuzz or no fuzz. Oops. Sorry about that. Should have warned the sound man first, huh? All right. So the way I discovered that, was actually by using a beating and parting tool, which is another version of a skew. It just has no skew angle to it. So I'm here, and you notice that when I was in a hardwood and I was taking a tenon, putting a tenon on it, and it slipped, and that's where the fuzz come through. This corner right here, as it cuts through the wood, raises that fiber. And that's really all it is. So when you bring it down, that corner, as it comes in, will raise that fiber. And that's all that does right here. That little corner, and it depends on how hard you push. And poplar is a very soft wood, so it goes in probably 1/8 of an inch or so. On a harder wood, you don't need to go in that far. It'll just rub the edges. It'll raise a nice peach fuzz. But if you want like the heavy, leafy look, poplar is a better one. It won't work so good with maple. Maple, the flakes won't get that big. They'll fall off first. And cherry, the harder the wood, the worse it is. So poplar is a good wood for that, and it's cheap. Any other questions on the skew? I do. I usually hone when I get dull. I don't always hone when I'm off the right off the grinder. Does everybody know what he's asking, honing? Do you know what that is? Okay. So I do hone. When I feel it getting dull, I'll hone probably 3 or 4 times before I'll take it back to the grinder. And you'll notice a good shiny spot up there where I've honed it. It'll be a good 1/16 of an inch by the time I'm ready to go back to the grinder. But I don't want to get that too big. This skew has been around for 5 years. I guess it was about this long when I got it. But they last a good long time. The other type of skew, there is one other type of grind that I'll talk about real quick that I don't use. Eli Alcivar, a guy in Israel, he grinds something a little bit different. Can you see this? He grinds it convex. Rather than hollow ground like this, he grinds his this way. He did that. Where is it? All right. So he did this to teach his son. And he ends up doing a lot of his tools this way. And matter of fact, when he has his 4 or 5 DVD set, he teaches this sharpening method. It's the only type of skew he uses now. He doesn't use a regular skew. I haven't played with it. I don't know what it's like. If you want to try it, I have one up here. I don't know. This was a Benjamin Best scraper. It's not real thick. It's not a real quality tool, but it's one I ground so I could play with it and haven't had a chance to do a lot of work with it. So I don't know what it's like. I can't tell you much about how it uses. Any other questions? That's it.